Called to order for its regularly scheduled meeting of March 27th, 2024. My name is Tim Rainey. I'm chairman of the board. Mr. Jeffrey Penzis serves as secretary of the board. Mr. Penzis, may I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Baker.
Here.
Mr. Bruce. Mr. Campbell.
Present.
Mr. Claiborne.
Here.
Ms. Scurlock.
Here.
Chair Rainey.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The Memphis and Shelby County Board of Adjustment is the oldest appointed governmental body in Memphis and Shelby County. We were established in 1925. The board hears appeals from the administration of the zoning ordinance, requests for variances from the zoning ordinance, and other requests as articulated by local zoning laws adopted pursuant to the enabling legislation. The 8 members of the board are appointed, 4 by the mayor of Memphis and 4 by the mayor of Shelby County, with confirmation by the Memphis City Council or the Shelby County Board of Commissioners. We serve without remuneration. This time I'd like to swear in the staff. You may remain seated. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right, thank you. May I get a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting?
So move.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Secretary, please provide us a secretary's report if you have one this month, and then explain the procedure for today's meeting.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. As for the Secretary's report, there are no announcements this afternoon.
Perfect.
The procedure for this meeting will be as follows. I will introduce each case as listed on the agenda. Copies of the agenda can be found on the front podium for each case. The planner with the Division of Planning and Development will give a presentation. At the conclusion of the staff presentation, the applicant will have 5 minutes to present his or her case. After the applicant's presentation, those speakers in support will have a total of 5 minutes. Then those speakers in opposition will have a total of 10 minutes. And then finally, the applicant will have 2 minutes to provide rebuttal. These times do not include time for questions from and answers to members of the board. The chairman may provide additional time provided both sides are given an equal amount of additional time. All parties who wish to provide testimony to the board will be sworn in by the chairman. If a member of the audience wishes to provide testimony in support of or in opposition to a particular case on today's agenda, he or she will need to fill out a speaker's card for the record. Speaker's cards are available at the front podium. Once filled out, speaker's cards can be submitted to any DPD staff member at the left podium. We do not need speakers cards from the applicants since their names are already part of the record. After all parties have been heard, the board will close the public hearing, make a motion, and then deliberate on the case. If the applicant or any speaker would like to be heard after the conclusion of the public hearing, or if a board member wishes to hear additional testimony from any party, a 2/3 vote is required to reopen the public hearing pursuant to the board's rules of procedure. Please note that once the public hearing is reopened, both the applicant and opposition will be allowed to provide additional testimony and/or rebuttal. All motions made by this board will be made in the affirmative. The private acts governing the board require the affirmative vote of at least 5 members to approve an application, regardless of the number of board members present. The board may also vote to hold an application for a period not to exceed 3 months with the consent of the applicant or 1 month without the consent of the applicant. All section numbers that we refer to come from the Memphis and Shelby County Unified Development Code, which was adopted by the Memphis City Council and Shelby County Board of Commissioners in August of 2010 and became effective on January 1st, 2011. I will introduce the entire UDC and make it part of today's record, thus dispensing with the reading of individual sections. The board is vested with the power to act on these cases before us today under the provisions of Chapter 9.22 of the UDC. Mr. Chairman, I submit that all cases have been filed in proper order, all applicants have been notified of this hearing, and all notice requirements have been fulfilled as required by the UDC.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. At this point, the board will establish its consent agenda. To establish the consent agenda, the Secretary will call out each eligible case. If any member of the audience, staff, or board member objects to a case being placed on the consent agenda, he or she should make their objection known by a show of hands when the Secretary reads that case. Once the consent agenda is established, the board will vote on all cases placed on the agenda, or consent agenda as a whole, will not hold individual public hearings on those cases. Mr. Secretary, which items on our agenda are eligible to be placed on consent today?
Item number 1, BOA 2023-161 at 6841 Center College Road as approval with conditions. Item number 2, BOA 2023-166 at 3141 Ferris View Road as approval with conditions. And I'd like to note items 3 and 4 have been withdrawn. Item 5, BOA 2024-008 at 6191 Park Avenue as approval with conditions. I'd also like to note item 6 has been withdrawn, and item 7 has also been withdrawn. Item 8, BOA 2024-11 as a hold for 1 month. Item number 9, BOA 2024-12 as a hold for 1 month. Item number 10, BOA 2024-13 as a hold for 1 month. Item number 11, BOA 2024-14 at 2984 Dalebrook Street as approval with conditions. I'd like to note item number 12 has been withdrawn. Item number 13, BOA 2024-16 as a hold for 1 month. Item number 14, BOA 2024-17 as a hold for 1 month. Item number 15, BOA 2024-18 as a hold for 1 month. Item number 16, BOA 2024-19 at 4002 Knight Arnold Road as approval with conditions. Item number 17, BOA 2024-20 at 2786 Stage Park Drive as approval with conditions. Item number 18, BOA 2024-21 as a hold for 1 month. Item number 19, BOA 2024-22 at 185 Butler Avenue as approval with conditions. Item number 20, BOA 2024-23 as a hold for 1 month. And item 24, BOA 2024-27 at 1351 Williams Avenue as approval with conditions.
Okay, thank you. So just so, as my list, the only cases we have not on the agenda that we could hear would be 21, 22, and 23?
And 17.
And 17, okay, thank you. Got it, okay. So may I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as established by the secretary, which is 1 as approval with, 1, 2, 5 approval with conditions, 8, 9, 10 as holds, 11 approval with conditions, 13, 14, 15 as a hold, 16 approval with conditions, 18 as a hold, 19 approval with conditions, 20 as a hold, and 24 approval with conditions.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Is there, I want to remind you, the board by voting on the consent agenda, he or she affirms that he has read the staff report and is in full agreement with the conditions. Mr. Secretary, might I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Ms. Scurlock,
Yes.
Chair Rainey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so the consent agenda has been approved. So if you're here for any of those cases, or really any case other than 17, 21, 22, and 23, you've been approved or held as requested. So, Mr. Secretary, would you call the first case we're going to hear today?
Item number 17, BOA 2024-20 at 2786 Stage Park Drive.
All right, I see the applicant is present. Do we have opposition today?
Yes.
Yes, okay, perfect. Thank you much. All right, if the opposition, Mr., I think it's Casper, can go ahead and at least be close to the front for when we move to opposition, that'd be great. And then if Ms. Estadny, if you'll give us a staff report, please.
Good afternoon, board members. This is Masana Stadnia with DPD. The case is BOA 2024. Sorry, this is a mistake in the PowerPoint. Case 20. The applicant is Conley Ray. It is located in 2786 Stage Park Drive. The request is a variance from paragraph 272A1 to allow an accessory structure to encroach 1.6 feet into the required 5-foot side setback. You can see the location map in here and also the vicinity map. A total of 77 notices have been mailed. And here is the zoning map. The subject property is located in residential single family 10 district. And also this is the land use map. Here are a few pictures of the site. This has been taken by the code enforcement as this is a retroactive case. This is the accessory that has been built with the 1.6 encroachment. And here is a site plan. And the analysis, the applicant is requesting a variance to allow a 1.6 foot encroachment into the side yard setback. And the applicant started to build the accessory structure 24 by 24 and 576 square feet without a permit and was issued a stop work order. And after the applicant did file a building permit, is when the setback encroachment issue was discovered that led to this variance request. The granting of this variance will not cause any substantial detriment to the public good, and we are recommending approval, and the only condition relies on any change or deviation from the site plan upon the determination of the zoning administrator shall be submitted to the Board of Adjustment for review and approval for administrative review and approval by the Division of Planning and Development. That concludes my staff report. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Estadnia or staff? All right, Mr. Bray, to give your name and address for the record for us.
David Bray with the Bray Firm, 2950 Stage Plaza North, Bartlett, Tennessee, 38134.
Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead and tell us about this case, sir.
So, Ms. Son covered everything pretty well. The owner of the property started building the accessory structure without the benefit of a permit, did not realize that he needed a permit. And it was after he was cited by code enforcement and then subsequently went to get the permit and actually called us and requested the survey that would discover that it was into the side yard setback. Mr. Conley's not able to be here today. So I'd like to hear what the opposition has to say and address his concerns at that time. But other than that, we are in agreement with the staff report and the conditions.
Okay, very good. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Bray, the building looks a little like a building that you would maybe buy and set on the site. And so my question is that the case? And two, how hard would it be to shift it over 1.26 or whatever it is feet?
I'm not familiar with the nature of the construction, so that's a question I would have to ask him.
Okay.
I know they poured a foundation for it, so that would be part of the issue.
You do know that he poured a foundation for it?
There is a foundation
Okay.
for it, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a slab.
Yeah, if it didn't have a foundation, we would have recommended that off the start.
Okay, any other questions? All right, if Mr., is it Casper? If you'll come and give your name and address for the record.
My name is John Casper. My address is 2857 Stage Park Drive.
Okay, let me swear you in real quick. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead and talk to us about this case.
I am the president of Stage Park Meadows Neighborhood Association. And a number of neighbors brought this case to my attention. I actually don't live that far away, probably just outside of the limit that the letters went. So I'm far less than a quarter mile away. So, but I have 5 neighbors' homes that the people are too old to come down here and speak. I hate to be just that blunt, but some of them are still in the flip phone era. They're not email type people. You know, I can give you the names and addresses if you like, but on behalf of myself and these 5 other neighbors that may or may not have mailed something in, I encourage them to do so. We are all opposed.
Okay. You have a reason you're opposed, or just in general, or?
One of the major reasons from my point of view is access to the utility pole with the transformer behind the house. That 5-foot easement on either side of the property line is a pathway to replace that transformer. Our neighborhood is in the process of having several poles replaced, most of which are in the 60-year-old range. And we've already had a crew through the neighborhood inspecting the poles for termites. Some poles are treated, some poles that are scheduled to be replaced. I've got one in my own backyard that doesn't have a transformer on it, but they said sometime in the next year or two, they're going to be coming through your backyard. Don't put up a new fence. So that's one of the reasons. You know, and as far as zoning goes, I think I just have to stop there with that reason. So.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Casper? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, is there anybody else here in opposition? All right, Mr. Bray?
Yes, sir. And can we go back to the aerial photo, or actually one of the side photos, maybe better?
You want the site plan?
The photos where it shows the, I guess, the view from Oakleaf.
this don't work, I can pull it up.
Yeah, that should, and this combined with the side view, I understand the concern about access back to the utility pole back there, but there's also utility easement along, let me get my orientation right, because she had it sideways on the screen, it confused me.
South side.
On the east side of the lot, there's also a utility easement there, and there is access back into that area for MLG and W crews to get to that pole back there. So again, we're in agreement with the findings of the staff report that this is not a substantial impact, and happy to answer any other questions that you guys have.
Okay, are there any questions for the applicant? Trying to look. So is the overhead electric, do you know which, does it go down one of the lines, either the back line or the side? I guess they're both side lines.
I believe it's down the east line.
Okay, where there's still, and that's not where we're actually encroaching. We're encroaching on the south side?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, the encroachment is to the south side.
okay. All right, any questions? All right, thank you very much. All right, I'm going to see, could we get a motion to approve BOA 2024-20 as conditioned by staff?
So moved.
Second.
And seconded. You have the double second. Any discussion? Yeah, I think it's pretty cut and dry. Yeah.
For Mr. Casper?
Oh, we're in discussion now.
Oh, so I can't ask him a question?
Yeah, we were already
Okay.
through that. Did you have something to say, Aaron?
I mean, nothing about it. I was just simply saying it seems pretty cut and dry. I mean, it's 1.6 feet. As long as they still have access to do any utility work that's needed, I don't think that changes the nature of it,
Yeah. The utility easement that's probably needed is on the east side of the property. All those lots have the 5 feet around them. I looked that up. So there's really 10 feet total there.
So you still have
that you're able to use
8.4 feet left.
Yeah.
Of an easement. Yeah.
where they don't currently have electric.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't see much of a hindrance to the neighborhood, but I understand the concern. Is there, so I think we're ready to vote. Mr. Penzis, would you give a roll call, please?
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Ms. Scurlock,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Chair Ready.
Yes, I find that the standards for variances in the section 9.2.6 of the UDC are being met, and the case will not be unduly detrimental to other properties in the vicinity.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. So motion approved. All right, if you will call the next case for us, Mr. Penzis.
Item number 21, BOA 2024-24 at 1601 Foster Avenue.
Okay. Is the applicant present? Gotcha. Hey, this one says 14, is that right? Or is that the? Got it. Perfect. All right, applicant present, if there's, I have some cards for opposition. If the opposition wants to kind of come forward a little bit, just to make it easier when we get to that part, that would be great. And we're meeting first on Foster, but we'll see, they're kind of all the similar things. So we'll kind of we'll vote separately. We'll kind of hear them all together probably, if that makes sense. So let's see. Ms. Christian, can you give us a staff report on what's going on here or what's happened?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. My name is Chloe Christian. I'm with DPD, and I'm presenting case BOA number 2024-0024, 0025, and 0026. The applicant is Martin Perry, and he is here with us today. And the addresses are 1601 Foster Avenue, 1637 Netherwood Avenue, and 1841 Waverly Avenue, respectively. And the request is the same for each case. It is a variance from subsection 3.9.2J to allow a single-family home without a raised foundation. So here's a location map for all 3 properties. They are located within the Glenview Neighborhood Historic District. And here's a zoning map. The properties are all zoned single-family residential 6 and are located within the Glenview Historic District, as I said. And here's a land use map surrounded by single-family homes as well. And here's an aerial view of the properties. So to start with item number 2024-0024 for 1601 Foster, these are the approved elevations for the property. And as you can see, it's kind of hard to see on this, but there is a raised ground floor right here of 18 inches indicated on these approved plans. And here is a site photo of the actual property that was built. If you can excuse me one moment, I believe I might have the incorrect presentation pulled up.
Okay.
One second.
No problem.
Okay, so for some reason, my updates did not register to this presentation, but I can just go off of my notes as well.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay.
So as I said, these are the approved elevations. This permit was approved in September of 2023 after receiving an approved COA the month prior in August, with Martin Perry being the applicant. And on the permit, as well as the COA application, there were conditions noting a requirement for a raised ground floor, which is indicated on this site plan. And so here's what was built. As you can see, there are no raised ground floors. And for BOA 2024-0025, once again, similar situation, approved COA in August 2023 and approved residential new construction permit in September that indicate the raised ground floors. However, raised ground floors were not included on the build. And I had slides about this in my updated presentation regarding the inspection schedule. So I'll just go through them.
Okay.
So for this particular property, 1637 Netherwood, as I said, the permit was issued in September. The framing inspection was scheduled for October 25th, and the applicant received a failed building inspection, noting that there was not an engineer's letter received. And so on October 27th, the applicant submitted an engineer's letter and received a partial note for a slab inspection. And the partial note means that the engineer's letter was received. The way that inspections work for residential new construction for slab inspections is that the applicant contracts a third-party engineer to submit a form that states that the foundation has been laid, and that's recognized as a partial inspection. So after that slab inspection took place, applicant scheduled a final inspection in January of this year, and it was failed, and the inspector noted that the COA inspection was not scheduled and that the conditions of the COA were not met. So in addition to scheduling a regular framing and slab inspection, COA required properties have a special note that you have to schedule a COA inspection as well. So the applicant did not schedule those COA inspections for all 3 properties. And on January of 2024, January 22nd, applicant scheduled another inspection for this property and canceled it later on. So none of these properties have received a pass on their final building inspections. And so moving on to 1841 Waverly, item 2024-0026. These are the approved plans for this property. This one was approved in October of last year, so they received their building permit in October. However, here are the site photos for this location. Even though they received a building permit in October, the framing inspections were scheduled for the following day of October 26th. So that essentially means that the foundation was laid prior to receiving a building inspection, because it takes on average 40 to 60 days for the foundation to cure. However, building can occur around 6 to 7 days after foundation is laid, but either way, that foundation would have been laid well before the permit was received or issued. And once again, the framing inspection was failed on this property as well. They received a partial slab inspection, meaning that they did receive an engineer's letter, and there was no final inspection for this property as well. So in conclusion, the applicant received approved COAs for all 3 properties in August and building permits in September and October as contractor for all properties. And each permit and COA mandated raised ground floors of at least 18 inches on each property. However, the applicant failed to construct raised ground floors as required by the approved COAs, and they all received failed final building inspections in January. Raised ground floors are a defining architectural element of the Glenview Historic District and are required in accordance with the contextual infill standards of the UDC. The applicant has been involved in every step of the application process as the applicant and the general contractor for all 3 buildings. And as I stated, the requirement for raised ground floors was the #1 condition on each application. And staff recommends rejection. However, if approved, staff recommends a condition for a detailed modified site plan with elevations that indicate a knee wall on the property, which will be in closer keeping with the historic district standards. And we would require that those elevations would be approved by landmarks as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, I got a quick question. So by knee wall, just so I understand, it would be a brick base, like you take off some of the siding and put a brick base actually on all the way around the building? Is that what you mean by that, or just in the front?
It would be specifically just around that front porch portion, I believe.
Touching the structure or just separating the yard from the porch?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think our intention was, we've done this on other projects where this has happened. What our thought is you would fill in between the 2 columns to the right with brick and then back to the back of the house. And we would work with landmarks to get the final design, but it essentially hides the fact that there's not a raised foundation to a certain extent.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense.
Would you also continue it along the siding as well, or remove a portion of the siding to keep it continuous, or in your thoughts, you just kind of terminate it at the?
I think just that, because I think you would have to do some structural, some things that may or may not be feasible, and I think that it could end up, sometimes that the wainscoting kind of thing actually makes it appear more like it's not raised. It's
Okay.
So that was our intent. Anyway.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. Any other questions as staff?
I just have a question. how did it get to this point where it looks like it completely deviated from what the approved drawings indicated? I don't know if that's for anybody here to address that.
Maybe the applicant, I don't think
Okay.
he's spoken yet.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. All right, if the applicant will come forward, please. If you'll state your name and address for the record.
Martin Perry, 5382 Seattle Road, Memphis, Tennessee, 38119.
Okay, Mr. Perry, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, go ahead and tell us about what went on.
All right, so with these properties, hey, Chloe, do you have the documents that I sent you to show all the other properties in the neighborhood?
Yes, give me 1 second. Is this what you were talking about?
Yeah. So before we start a project in any neighborhood, especially in the historical district, we tend to go around the neighborhood to verify things of this sort, the foundation and things of that nature. So in this particular neighborhood, there were already 8 previous new builds in the neighborhood, and none of them had a raised foundation of 18 inches. So once we began to pour our slabs, we just poured the slab as we would typically pour the slab, which is typically about 20-something inches, but part of that is in the footing. So some of that goes under the ground like you see on all of the other new constructions in the neighborhood. We did our form board, but we just didn't go up 18 inches. And we looked at all the other houses and they were the same way, so we pretty much went with what was already there as far as the new construction houses go.
Did you remember when you went to Landmarks and they said it had to be 18 inches above grade?
That's the thing, I didn't. So the only thing I remember us talking about was more so about the window pattern. And it was just making sure that the windows were consistent and not painting the brick. I went right in and immediately just made sure that all my windows were consistent and that we didn't paint the brick columns.
Right. So you're not saying they didn't say it, you're saying like you just missed it.
I really missed the email.
Yeah, okay,
I missed the
okay,
email.
yeah. Are there any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Just in your opinion, what do you think could be implemented that would maybe keep this from happening again, not just with yourself, but anybody?
I mean, just being more aware of it. So we brought another one in to Landmarks for the next upcoming meeting, and now I'm aware of it. I've built a couple of houses over there in the Glenview Historical District before, and I didn't put an 18-inch raised foundation on there. So it never even came to my attention that we needed to do it anyway, with all other slabs being the way that they are. So I think if we just kind of reiterate that more in the meetings when we're going through Landmarks, then I'm sure it'll definitely be taken care of.
And then let me, for staff real quick, this still has to go back to Landmarks after us though, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so we're just doing our variance on our stuff, but then they still have to approve it. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Perry?
Yeah, so the proposed solution staff talked about, bricks from the sides, would you have any objection to that, or does that work for you?
I mean, none of the other houses have that. I think it, just as a, I really don't think it'll look good with just that brick like that. And none of the other houses are like that. And none of them have a raised foundation, and they all look pretty good. I mean, if that's the only way we can get it done, and I'm not I don't disagree with them. I want to work with them any way I can, but every other house looks good without the raised foundation. I built that house. That one doesn't have a raised foundation.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
It just goes back to I guess the approved architectural drawings that were shown.
Right.
They actually show the raised foundation. So was it just a matter of kind of maybe some
Yeah, when
value
you,
engineering out that realized it would be cheaper to just do it on?
That's pretty much always rule number one. But then another thing is, if you have a flat and level lot, then you are typically not going to do more than one form board. You know, if your lot is level, then you typically won't do that. If we have a drop in the back or a drop in the front, then you'll pretty much put two form boards right there and kind of level it out with the other lot, the other half of the lot that's even. Yeah, and that's the email I got, but I didn't realize that until after we were stopped with code enforcement. He told us that we didn't meet all the approvals, which was that one, and I was like, dude, I didn't know what you were talking about, the 18-inch foundation. And once I went back in my email, I seen the thing there.
I'm just looking, I'm Google viewing the street and stuff.
Mine is, I guess, a question and a comment, because I keep hearing the word typical, which if you're going before the Landmarks Commission and historical, you're not doing typical, you know, as a contractor and business owner. And I guess the neighborhood and the code enforcement would like to know, how are you going to make sure that you're not doing typical?
Right. Well,
That you pay attention to all of the
details, right?
details.
Yes, ma'am. I spoke with the inspector, and which is the framing inspector, the one that failed me on my final. We were calling in to get a final framing and our certificate of occupancy. And he told me if Landmarks would allow, and if we could get a letter or email from them, then he was okay with it. Because it's not doing harm to anyone. It won't harm the tenant or anything like that. I mean, visual, we just don't have a raised foundation. But moving forward, any other property we build in the neighborhood, we would more than be welcome to build 18 inches, however many inches we need to build.
Well, and following the directions that are printed out.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
So, I mean, ultimately, what's to prevent Landmarks from saying, yeah, we don't care what you guys say at BOA, we're gonna hold strong to our.
That's them.
Yeah.
That's their
right.
decision to make.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't want to do that, because then your project is held up. So even like with these houses, those houses sitting, we can't get a final on them. So that means nobody can move in these houses. 2 of them have been broken in, HVAC units stolen, fireplace ripped out the wall. So you definitely don't want the house, you know, just sitting there like that. So if you can just work with them, then you will. It was just something we missed. I missed that email.
Another question, because this is part of the report on page 13 on the Netherwood, 1637 Netherwood picture. Because, I mean, now you're to the point where you're missing details, and see the fence next to the house next door. Yeah. Yeah, and that has a raised foundation
Right.
next door.
Right. I refer to the new construction houses over there. The old existing house has been there 100 years. Most of those have basements and crawl spaces, so those will have a raised foundation. I was only referring to the new construction.
Hence the historical district, so
Right.
that you can match what historically has been done.
Right.
So that's
Yes,
your
ma'am.
goal. But, and I guess Landmarks is addressed to the setback with the fence, or did they? Because it's covering the next door neighbor's window. But,
That's the neighbor's fence, the tall one.
Hmm?
That's the neighbor fence, that 8-foot fence to the right, that's their fence. That was
Okay.
there when we
Okay.
purchased the lot.
Okay.
How long has Glenview been an historic district?
Wow.
For a bit. So 10 years ago.
2007, is that what you said?
Huh?
No, she said since she was growing up.
I
so.
said,
I want to say it was
Like when it
in
was-
the 2007.
okay, since it got officially,
Yeah.
okay,
Right.
basically, okay.
It's always been historic. I
Right,
didn't know, but as
right.
far as like having to go to landmarks.
Right, that makes sense. Mhm.
Been a
It's on the
while
National
since it
Register
was
in 99.
approved. It could even be
The
99.
guidelines are.
I think it was placed on the register in 99.
2000, so at least since 2000, and that may have been an update, so.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we're gonna move to the opposition. You'll have a chance to rebut after that, Mr. Perry. So I have 3 cards here. I have the Arnetts and Mr. Moore. Do any of y'all want to come up and speak to us? We got one taker. Okay. If you want to go ahead and come down, if you go ahead and give your name and address for the record.
Stephen Moore, 1610 Foster Avenue.
Okay, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, first of all, the house that I live in is the house that I was born and raised in. Built in 1917, and it's a historical district. It means a lot to me, you know, my property value, where I live, because it's a historical district. I wouldn't want to go anywhere else. I just want my property value to go down and bring my value down. And I'm speaking for the neighborhood because, I mean, this is my biggest investment. And that's just, I mean, if it's guidelines like guidelines, and I was wondering how it even got to that point where it wouldn't raise, because most of the houses, older houses, do have a raise. I mean, I have 3 steps going up, plus the basement, plus a squirrel basement. So that's just my view about it,
Right.
being a historical district.
Yeah, all right. Do you have any, well, hold on one second. You're probably off the hook, but are there any questions for Mr. Moore? All right, thank you very much. All right, Mr. Arnett, you'll give your name and address for the record?
My name is Marifa Arnett, address 1870 Cloverdale Drive. Similar to the gentleman.
Real quick, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Arnett.
Similar to the gentleman, Mr. Moore, who just sat down, who I saw at our Glenview Neighborhood Association meeting that I'm glad to be a part of. I live in the home of my great-grandfather. My son is sitting over there who just turned 5 months today. I am a product of the investment that my great-grandfather made. Without the neighborhood being what it is, I would not have the opportunities that I have today. And that will continue for my son. Some of the points that Mr. Perry brought up actually remind me of some of my other children. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. I mean it in a way to reference how my daughters in the past have said, well, my big sister did it, but there were clear instructions that I gave, which does not excuse the fact that somebody else broke the rules. Not only that, he used a picture of his own doing as an example of why he should get away with it. He showed his own building as an example of why another issue of his should be okay. I don't believe that he wasn't aware of it. You don't just build a home without plans, with missing emails. And if you do, then your competency should be punished. These homes, as he said, the home that he lives in is over 100 years old. So these aren't just things that should just happen in happenstance. This isn't a gardener mistakenly cutting some petunias. This has financial impact on generations, on a neighborhood, and subsequently the city. So his actions and his irresponsible way of approaching the building in a National Historic District is inexcusable. I'm not sure if he thought that, once I build it up, what are they going to do? Because that's what I'm thinking. It's here now. What are we going to do? And I think that he was aware of that. I saw some of his faces as the young lady was describing his history. The mistakes that he made, the documented warnings and plans that he was given did not seem like a gentleman that was aware of the detriment of the actions that he committed. I also noticed that he said 38119, so he does not live in the neighborhood. So him saying it doesn't seem that bad to me is also seems to be disrespectful as well to the people in that neighborhood. I wanted to address each point, but I also want to ask, yet from this point, what do we do about this? I'm here today because one of the elders, 70 plus, was so upset that this was able to continue. She said she sat in a meeting all day and somebody came and said that the plans were already approved without even hearing her. And as the following generation, I want to be here and fight. I don't want her to be disappointed more in the future. And as someone who is standing on her shoulders of the work that she did so that I can have a home and walk my children into a safe neighborhood, I want to know, what can we do about this? Builders and contractors like him
somebody else, Ms. Arnett, are you wanting to actually speak, or you just registered that you were here? Okay, all right. Thank you. Okay. All right, is there anybody else here in opposition to this case? All right, Mr. Perry, if you want to come back up and rebut.
Oh, yeah, appreciate that. Man, my mom just bought a house in Gillette. I actually encouraged her to buy over there because it is one of the majority black historical districts in the city. She just purchased a home on Foster. My grandmother just moved out of Glenview probably, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago. She just moved off of Netherwood. She was in the corner house on Netherwood, 1900 block. But it was just something that we actually missed in the email as far as the 18 inches go from the landmarks district. It's a mistake that won't happen again. I'm well aware of it. I love the Glenview historical districts. I feel like the new construction houses are part of the reason why values are up in most of these historical districts. With a lot of these lots, these are blighted houses that we take and tear them down and clear these lots and build new homes there for families to come over there and create memories. If this house went right there, then it probably just been a dilapidated house that's just sitting there, or a vacant lot that's just, I guess, just getting built up with tires and all that type of stuff. So when we come in, we don't come in just from a standpoint of trying to make a quick dollar or anything like that. We come in trying to improve the neighborhood itself. Again, I just encourage my mom to move in this neighborhood. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Okay. Are there any further questions for Mr. Perry?
I've got a question.
Go for it.
Help me understand. He talked about, he said that you used another house that you had built in that neighborhood, right, as evidence that this kind of thing has gone on before. Is that true? Is that a project different from these? Can you talk about that other?
Yeah. Project? So that was one of the new construction houses that are in a neighborhood that was built without a raised foundation. All of the other houses that are newly built in the neighborhood don't have a raised foundation. Just so happened I was the builder of one of those houses. That house didn't have a condition of the 18 inches though. On the document that we sent from Landmarks that I told you guys I did not see, I went back to that document to even see it once I became aware of all of this, and that wasn't on there. So that's how that ended up going about. But I didn't have that house up there just to say, hey, I built this house and we got away with it. I just had the house up there because it's a new construction house and code didn't stop us or anything like that. Code comes out to inspect several times and it was never brought to our attention the same way it was with these 3 houses. It wasn't brought unto our attention. It could have been brought to our attention on the front end, on a framing inspection or anything like that. It was brought once the house was completed. I mean, if we could have pivoted any way in the beginning of the process, we would have done that.
So in your other house, that was the raised foundation was not a requirement.
No, it wasn't. I have the
Landmarks Commission.
Yeah, I went in front of
that
Landmarks.
One too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Is there a chance these conditions were added at a later date? I'm just trying to see if the previous house was in fact in the same community, while that condition may not have been.
I'm not sure which address that is. I can get the address and we can check, but
okay.
This is not just a requirement of Landmarks in the COA, but it's also a UDC requirement. And so, I mean, we can certainly look at it, but this is something that's a requirement in most of the areas of Midtown.
Okay.
And it's well known and was not added at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? We can get a motion to approve. We're going to do these one at a time, although we might not have other discussion. BOA 20-24-24 as conditioned by staff.
So move.
All right, any thoughts? After we vote, it goes to Landmarks. Yeah, it's kind of like got 2 steps that both have the same question. On what
one of the pictures that was brought up as an example had the, instead of the knee wall around the porch that we're talking about, which you can see, I was doing the same thing. You were looking at the Google Street View, but had a brick facade up.
Yeah.
Can we pull those pictures back up, those examples? That I thought, if, I mean, I don't want him to have to tear the house down.
That's,
They had the brick wainscot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm probably get an address on it because I found it when I was listening, but Google viewing this whole street and area. Saw one like that.
57.
It was one of the ones he
1752
he
Netherwood.
sent in. When you
Yeah.
pulled up those pictures that he,
And look up 1752 Netherwood.
keep going up, it's
1752.
That's one of the newer ones that.
there you go.
Yep, that one's flat on the ground too.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, they're all flat on the ground, but at least that,
And that's what I was asking about the wainscot possibly continuing even around the perimeter, but.
right.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, I just wanted to clarify, so this is a UDC requirement as well, which is why it's before you to get the variance from the UDC requirement. Just to be clear, the BOA cannot grant a variance from a landmarks requirement, so like they have to, approve whatever, as you mentioned.
Going on.
Which we can definitely talk about the design here, but what we typically do in this instance, if it's going to landmarks, is, and I think we could just remove our knee wall requirement and just add that it has to have landmarks approval, and then they can, because if you decide something here that
Right.
doesn't agree with them, that would be a
I
conflict.
somewhat trust them more to be more something appropriate landmark-wise, since that's the name of their committee.
Correct.
Commission.
And in the end, they do have the final say on design to a certain extent. I mean, the point is that if they require something design-wise that are for the design guidelines, someone can't come to the BOA and ask for a variance to their decision, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So would it be ultimately an approval with the condition that it gets ultimately approved by landmarks, basically?
Yes, it looks like we would just, in the first sentence, delete indicating knee wall in closer keeping, yeah. So the whole sentence, well, I love the secretary.
We could modify condition 1, basically just to say, a detailed modified site plan and elevations, keeping with Glenview Historic District guidelines, shall be submitted to the Memphis Landmarks Commission for review and approval through the Certificate of Appropriateness process.
Yeah, I like that, okay.
Question though, what does rejection mean? Like, say we don't approve, what happens then?
You would essentially have to tear down the house, and I think you'd have to tear out the slab and redo it, because I think you can't just add on to the
Can't just
slab.
add this.
So if we reject it, then there's no need to even go before landmarks, because they've got to get approval from both bodies, right?
Correct, and they can't, because the 18 inch is a UDC requirement, landmarks couldn't vary from that, only y'all.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with what somebody said, that I trust landmarks to make this decision better than us.
Yeah, I think this is a screw up.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a screw up that is so bad, I'm gonna say you need to destroy these houses, is the problem, but it's definitely a screw up. It's 3 screw ups that happened, at least for me, they happened contemporaneously, as opposed to he's coming back after doing this 6 months ago, he was here and he's done it again. I don't think that if this happened again, I would show any grace on it at all. But here, it is, well, I mean, like, it's a historic neighborhood. It's not at that 18 inches, but it's not like a crazy departure from what's in the neighborhood. They somewhat have like that look of like, the early 20s and 30s and stuff like that in the way they're done. So I don't think I could vote to deny it.
You know, while we were hearing evidence, I was, thinking that, just trying to deal with, well, how do we avoid setting a precedent for future developers where they'd say, well, I'm gonna do it the way, I want to do it, and it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. And we don't want to send that message, but, how do we get that in? How do we deal with that here? And I don't know that we can. I wish that, like somebody pointed out earlier, this was found out earlier in the process before so much money was invested. If there was a way that we can catch it early in the process, but that's not this board's role.
Right.
I mean,
if I speak, that is true, although there are the issue that he did fail framing inspections, and then he just continued to build the house regardless on at least 2 of them.
So that was kind of what I was getting at, because I was going to say to your point, Bruce, it would be nice if code enforcement was on board and said, hey, this is what for some reason, and then they completely said, no work can continue until this is fixed. But to your point, it sounds like they did fail this inspection.
I think the latter 2 cases, 22 and 23, were the ones where the framing inspections were failed. So essentially, you shouldn't have kept building the house if you didn't pass a framing inspection.
So if this was a garage, a freestanding garage, I would, in a heartbeat, say tear it down. With good conscience, it's hard to say tear down a finished house. As much as I want to not set that precedence for future developers to think, similar to how you did, everybody else has done it, there must be the correct way, and then they come to us and we say, well, it's already built, we're going to give you permission. That's just the nature of what we live in. It's still a fully developed final house, and tearing it down was just, it wouldn't sit well with me.
Yeah, and if I may, we are continuing to look for ways to stop things that are not per approved documents. We have steps that they're supposed to call in for inspections that they did not, for COA, for the foundation. They were not called in, so we're going to continue to look for ways that we will stop those things in the process. We have things in place, but it's upon the contractor to follow those steps too. And when we don't have that, then we will put things in place that will stop any construction until that does happen. So that's something that's ongoing for different instances. And so
is there a monetary penalty when this happens? Because that is something definitely that could be in place, that a very steep, and I know that's not this board, but we're talking about how can we avoid this in the future, but something that actually hurts the pocket enough to say, I'm going to pay attention next time. I don't know if it's turned down the whole house, but I think there is a dollar figure that would stop that in the future.
We do have double fees for the COA for retroactive, and of course application fees at this point. And really, it would take an ordinance with the city council to get anything more severe than that. And I think when we have, most of the cases that we get are not this severe, and so I don't know that there would be a lot of appetite for those those steep fees right now, but we do have some of them. And again, we're going to continue working to put things in place to decrease and try to eliminate these issues.
Okay, other thoughts?
Well, I just want to say that I really hate it that this happened. Such a beautiful neighborhood, and I'm so excited about the growth that's coming back to it. But it's still fragile. It has to be done right, and that's why this case is so important to us. I agree, though, tearing down a house, it's tough. But I tell you, if we keep getting them, I can get there. if we get more of these kinds of cases. So
Yeah, I think, not to step on your toes, but with, we've talked about precedent being set. I think this is more of a, not everybody's going to get this chance. This will not set a precedent. If it keeps happening, then I think the board would be, we used to be a little easier on other things on the code than we are now. We've come down harder.
Yeah,
So.
in fact, by it happening like this, it makes us feel even more strongly that we're not going to.
Let it continue.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other thoughts before we vote? Okay, so we're just voting on the first one, and then we'll vote on the other ones too. So, Mr. Penzis, will you call the roll call, please?
Well, first, let me make sure I know what we're voting. The condition number one.
Correct.
We're voting on it with the change that you read, that was read by staff, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Ms. Gerlach,
Yes.
Chair Rainey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so we can get a motion to approve BOA 2024-25 as conditioned by staff with the revised condition 1 that we had from the last case.
Motion.
Second. Okay, being seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, if you'll give us a roll call, please, Mr. Penzis.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Ms. Gerlach,
Yes.
Chair Rainey.
Yes. So motion passes. And then get a motion to approve BOA 2024-26 as conditioned by staff with the revised condition 1.
So move.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce,
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Claybrook,
Yes.
Ms. Gerlach,
Yes.
Chair Rainey.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So all three of those have been approved. It still has to go through landmarks, which had, they were the ones that said if it's not